I've always felt the title secretary is a nicer title than congressman myself. And so, Mr. Secretary, I'd like to congratulate you on your testimony. There's a lot of real meat in it and a lot of real accomplishment, but I think you've been overly modest in what is, I think, a major event in your last paragraph. I think it's a very decisive move of you to formally endorse national standards for building codes of fire protection because you know that it is a very contentious subject, but I think it's a terrific accomplishment because it shows a number of things. First, a lot of people have the idea that we as a commission are working in secret and we're going to pop out this set of recommendations in July, when in fact it's been a very interactive process, and your staff has been particularly good in working with our staff in developing things where through our unique ability to draw on information, we have seen this national standards issue emerge. I mean, you've heard the testimony about the real problems in the New York building codes, but those are just a tiny tip of the iceberg. There are no national standards for these kinds of things. And working with your staff, we now see that you have preempted us, which is terrific. That's what the purpose of this operation really is. But I commend you on taking that and running with it. And I just wish it were headlines at the beginning rather than the last paragraph. Another issue I'd like to pursue is Tim Romer's about the allocation. We had pretty forceful testimony from the mayor this morning and from officials before that about the grotesque distortion of your fairly sensible risk-based recommendations for allocation of Homeland Security funding from the various accounts where Alaska ends up with $58 per head and New York ends up with $25 per head, and probably thanks to Bob's persuasiveness, Nebraska's right up there near the top as well. But I think the record shows that this really is a terrible misallocation, and it happened in Congress, and it has been a complete turnover almost of this essential national defense funding to pork barrel. And I know you weren't a part of it, but the mayor also complained about the shift that your department has made from having 7 high-risk areas now all the way up to 80, which means that New York gets an even smaller, a smaller piece. And of course, some of the New York politicians have said, oh, it's those terrible Republicans because New York is not going to vote Republican, so take the money away from them and give it to Wyoming. Say it ain't so.
It ain't so.
Thanks. But could you talk about that a bit and how you can use the power of your office, which is formidable, to stop this pork barreling?
Mr. Secretary, Commissioner, we have advocated for 2 years that the funding formula be changed. With one caveat, I do think in the world within which we now live, in a post-9/11 world, which has changed considerably, that there ought to be some dollars going to each state as they build up over a period of time a capacity to support each other's in these communities. So I don't want to leave you with the impression that I think we ought to just simply send it to the urban communities. I don't think that's the right thing to do. What we did propose in this budget, however, is take a substantial portion of the dollars that would have been distributed on a formula basis and put it into a different pot, basically, to draw down from, which is really directed and based upon population density, critical infrastructure, and threat. It seems to me that we ought to continue to fund at a certain level. Obviously, I've concluded not quite as aggressively the 50 states. In the smaller states, we were working with their Homeland Security advisors, their first preventers, their first responders. Sometimes their ability to respond to an event it will be just as complicated. They'll have the needs, but much more of a mutual aid. Not every community will have everything, but they need to build up the capacity within the state. But having said that, I do think that we would advance the cause of enhancing security a lot faster, and it will be a lot stronger if we're able to direct more resources to areas where the potential loss of life is the greatest, where the greatest percentage of critical infrastructure exists, and frankly, where we know the threat exists. It's a dynamic process. It's something we want to assess every year, but population density, threat, and critical infrastructure should drive most of the money, not just part of it.
Thank you. And I have another question about something you talked about earlier. You had in your private sessions with us what I thought was a very astute analogy of the sharing of intelligence with as the central nervous system of information in the government. And our investigations have shown that there have been things like the TTIC set up as part of the brain stem and the main part of the nervous system. But we have found that out at the extremities, i.e., let's say, New York City's JTTF and other places, say, in the Defense Department, that they're numb. They haven't gotten the information. There doesn't seem to be any push. The plumbing does not seem to have been completed to get this fused intelligence out to the users. As we understand it, the New York City intelligence establishment, which is very good, and of course, as the mayor pointed out, the New York City Police Department is bigger than the whole FBI. Yet they depend on the pipeline of the FBI to filter what comes out of the TTIC. Through the FBI, and there's no real push system to it as it exists. So, I mean, you are so the agencies that you are in charge of are so critical, both for gathering intelligence at the border and for needing the most up-to-date fused intelligence from the intelligence community. What needs to be done so that this concept, which is a valid one, which you've talked about, can actually work, because it's not working today?
Well, first of all, I think within the department, one of the most strategic pieces of the new department is the information analysis infrastructure protection piece. We literally have our own analysts in the TTIC, and there'll be even more there as we ramp up and as they build a larger facility. We are another dimension to that push system, because we see ourselves as being, frankly, advocates for our partners at the state and local level. Now, New York City is unique among, I think, the urban areas because the CIA has assigned someone here and has daily contact with the intelligence unit and the counterterrorism unit, the FBI, none more robust JTTF than here. But again, this is we're developing another pipeline to New York City. It is, and frankly, to the governor's office. But this is not just to New York City. Our partners in the integration effort, people and technology, are the states and the urban areas. We now have the secure video conferencing at the state level, secure phones with the principals at the state level. We'll drive that down to the major urban areas. The internet-based system that we have called the Homeland Security Information Network, by the way, we used during the holiday season. We used the internet, and we had literally minute-by-minute situational awareness in New York, Los Angeles, in our operations center. We were communicating back and forth with one another through the entire two-day period. We also began to send our own information out through a series of bulletins and advisories. We glean information from the TTIC. We glean information that we may generate ourselves. Our job is to push that information out, which we do. And frankly, from time to time, our Assistant Secretary of Information Analysis will just pick up the phone and double-check and make sure that the folks in New York City or somebody, did you guys get that information? Are you acting on that? Is there anything else we could do to, that you need to know? So again, we're building redundancy in that push system. and I think that's a good thing.
Good. One last question. We secretaries never go through a hearing without some congressman asking us, well, could you...
Thank goodness there's a governor on the thing.
being asked,
Governors.
well, Mr. Secretary, what is your personal opinion about this? So I know, and I used to respond, well, I do have a personal opinion, but I don't agree with it. And
Depending on what you ask me, I may give you the same answer
yeah,
back.
well, that's what I'm afraid of. But the question is, many of the original advocates of the Homeland Security bill felt very strongly that the domestic intelligence in a cop shop fundamentally did not work, and that the domestic intelligence function should be put into Homeland Security. Now, could I have your personal opinion about, in the great by and by, let's just say not in this administration, but someday, would it make sense to have a non-law enforcement domestic intelligence agency fully under the protections of privacy and civil liberties and so forth that now exist under the Justice Department? Would it make sense someday to have that function in your department?
I think there are certain features of the existing system that in time we should have. The Terrorist Screening Center, where they've consolidated the databases about names and others. At some point in time, I would like to, and I've discussed privately, and now I'm discussing it publicly, that ought to be part of our Homeland Security infrastructure, because we are we're probably the number one consumer of all that information. At least we rival anybody else there that claims they would use it as frequently as we do. But I do think the relationship that we are developing, and again, we are a new department, and Bob Mueller and the FBI have been charged with the President to be the domestic counterterrorism agency. That relationship is developing and maturing quite rapidly. It begins with the principals. We have a day-to-day working relationship that I think is exceptional. I have a special assistant who sits over in the FBI office and gets the same briefings the FBI director does. We've linked up some of our units with regard to terrorist financing, our immigration and customs enforcement people with the FBI's people. So I think as this relationship improves and matures, and certainly the FBI director has made significant steps organizationally and technology to make headquarters the fusion center for all the field offices, and that will be more easily shared with us and other members of the intelligence community. I think that will not be more than adequate. I think that absolutely fits the bill. But I do think you have to give it a chance to evolve. But I would tell you, we're setting the right tone at the principals level, and we just have to let the organizational and technological changes that we are both affecting right now have to come to pass, and I think it would be precisely what you need and what the Congress wanted.
Thank you very much, Secretary.